I know Perloff has already said congratulations, but let me say congratulations on being nominated for the College Football Hall of Fame. I imagine that had to be a really humbling and big thrill for you.
Yeah, it's really special. I mean, I think you guys have both known me long enough that, I don't necessarily take some of this stuff too seriously, but this is what the award or what it represents. The College Football Hall of Fame has certain protocols to be eligible. One is you have to be a first-team All-American. When you play the quarterback position, there is only one. I was in a year where Peyton Manning playing college football. So how the heck did I get a first-team All-American honor? Second, they have a morality clause of sorts that kind of sits in it. What have you done career? What have you done in your community? And I think that the player probably deserved to be in the College Football Hall of Fame a while ago, but, the man didn't. And I think what they've done by putting me on the ballot is that they have seen a shift or a change or a guy that's making it about other people, making it about his community. And I think that's why it just means so much more to me and my family being nominated. Just a different kind of perspective around it. It's been a wonderful week here in the Leaf household for sure.
Wow, so impressive,
cool.
right?
Yep.
Can you do me a favor though? Maybe pick an easier class to get nominated in first time. This is a who's who. I mean, I know a lot of these people. I know but it's Reggie Bush's and Luke Kuechly's and
Larry Fitzgerald.
There are a lot of
stuff.
NFL Hall of Famers on this list too. So who knows? But that's pretty cool. I mean, what do you think when you think about these people that just on this group alone? I mean, tell me about like when you were going up for the Heisman. What's it like to be in a fraternity at this level of player?
It's special. It's something I never thought would be possible for me coming where I came from. So when I look at that list of names, and I see a bunch of former teammates on there too, Steve Hutchinson when I was in Seattle, and of course Warwick Dunn when I was in Tampa. There's just some really great players that are on this ballot, and Randy Moss,
Tim Tebow, Tebow too,
yeah,
right?
I think Tebow got in last year if I recall correctly. I voted, did my ballot, and I didn't realize it was separate, Division I AA and Division 1A, and there was Randy's name there, and I was like, how is he not in? How is that dude not in the College Football Hall of Fame? I mean, he was the best college football player I'd ever seen in '97 that year. So, that's a really great group. I will say this. I was chatting with Tim Couch a little bit, and I just kind of thought I've become pretty close with him, and how cool it would be if him and I went into the Hall of Fame in the same class. I think that would be a lot of fun, especially the way that people consider our pro careers and whether that objectivity actually goes into the voting process or not. And I think it probably does. So that would be awfully cool, I think, if Tim and I went in at the same time and got to celebrate in Vegas together with our families and stuff.
I'm so sorry. I was reading last year's list of who got in to Reggie Bush. I mean, it's just who's who. Real quick, I've made you tell it before, but can you just tell real quick the story of when you were recruited by Miami, what that night out was like? Because you were a big star coming out of Montana. I kind of, when you tell the story, I wish you had gone there just for the stories, but who took you out when you went down to the Hurricanes?
Well, I had to go on a Sunday to Tuesday trip, which is rare. You usually go in from Friday to Sunday, but I was playing basketball. And I wasn't going to miss games of basketball. We had games on Friday and Saturday night. So I had to go on a Sunday and come back on a Tuesday. And so it really wasn't, they had to like manufacture some fun on South Beach a little bit. And Bryce Erickson was my host, who was Dennis Erickson's son, who was a walk-on quarterback at the time. And there were a couple players that, I mean, everybody was out. I think, I forget what, one of the Marley nephews, Bob Marley, was a linebacker on the team. He was out with us. But then there was a couple guys that years later I would figure out, and I didn't know at the time. We were in a like a makeshift like limo van taking us from one bar to another, and And I remember years later thinking back to that night, and there was this one guy in there, and I figured it out immediately when I sat down next to him in Tampa Bay as my teammate was Warren Sapp. And I didn't know, he was a sophomore at the time. And then there was this junior and this big Polynesian guy. And then, of course, years later watching WWE and then watching movies, and the biggest movie star on the planet, it was Dwayne Johnson. It was The Rock. So, but what's so funny about it is that it never even ran through my mind that they were anybody until they became stars. And then I could look back to the story. It wouldn't have been a story if they hadn't become Hall of Famers and, biggest movie star on the planet. It just wouldn't be a story. How cool was it a time to be on a recruiting trip during that time? I was never going to go there. I wanted the trip, water experience, all those things. And it did. It served itself well.
You were recruited you were in a limo with The Rock on a recruiting
well,
trip.
It wasn't The Rock then. He was Dwayne then. Ryan Leaf is our guest. He's the host of the Straight Line podcast.
He wasn't even a play. Get on the field, right? He couldn't even play. He was.
And, Ryan, I know you guys as pro athletes, you all get your motivation from different places, but a lot of people say that Dwayne Johnson is still motivated by the, quote unquote, like failure, to be a huge star at Miami for football. And that's what motivated him to be great at wrestling and to make his name somewhere else. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy how it worked out. Ryan's a host of the Straight Line podcast on PointsBet USA. Okay, quickly, can I ask you another recruiting story? So you said you wanted to go to Miami, but you had no intention of actually going to Miami. What other trips did you take that you had no intention of going, but you just wanted to go see the campus or go hang out?
None. Okay. I went on 3 others, and then I canceled my trip to Oregon. I went to Colorado because I wanted to be a Buffalo so bad. It was everything I wanted. I went down on a non-official visit, and it was Colorado, Nebraska, and it was Tommy Frazier versus Cordell Stewart in the heyday. And I was just like, this is too great. But then I looked at the roster, and it was, like I said, it's Cordell Stewart, and Coy Detmer was next. And I was like, I don't know if I have a shot of playing here, to be honest with you. Love that. Colorado State was another trip I went on. Love Sonny Lubeck. Of course, he had ties to Miami and Dennis Erickson and all these kind of Montana ties from coaches all over the country. And then ultimately I took a trip to Washington State, the only trip that my dad went with me on. And I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with Mike Price, the head coach. And, when he called on New Year's Day and made me an offer that if I came there, we'd play in that Rose Bowl together. I just bought it, hook, line, and sinker, and away we went.
Wait, Drew Bledsoe there at the time, or did you? I know you were friends with him. Did you miss him, or did you succeed him?
Yeah, there was a year between when he left. He left in '93. He was in the '93 draft. '92 was his last year, and then I came in '94. In between, there was a guy by the name of Mike Pattinson who was his backup, who was incredibly good, who got hurt mid-year, and then I came in my freshman year and then started that run. But yeah, I think when I signed with Washington State, there was, you want to add pressure to kids and things like that. I think they were calling me Baby Bledsoe, which yeah. I mean, what are you supposed to do with that when you got the number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL and you're coming in and people calling you better step up, you better do something that he never did and break records and things like that. And so that's what we tried to do.
Ryan Leaf is our guest, the host of the Straight Line podcast on PointsBet USA, with all these other questions I want to ask you, of course, about the NFL. But you mentioned Colorado and taking that recruiting trip back in the day and the atmosphere and everything. And listen, people have bought the hype now on Colorado with Deion for sure. But do you think that Deion can get Colorado back to the heights of, where they were when you're watching Colorado play Nebraska? It was the biggest thing in the world.
Time will tell. I mean, the hype, I knew when he was hired, when they made the hire, that it was going to have this big boom, right? And people were going to be interested and he was going to be entertaining. And, he's completely flipped over the roster. I think 65 new players are on that roster. So we're going to find out pretty quick whether or not you can do that at the collegiate level. Now, Mel Tucker went to Michigan State and did a tremendous job with the transfer portal. Mike Norvell down at Florida State has really found a niche in that as well. But this team's not very good already. And you're going to flip it all around, and you're bringing a lot of guys in from what people may consider a lower division of players. They've recruited incredibly well, and they're going to ask them to go play right away. What's the confidence level? What's the hype when this team is 3-9 at the end of the year? Who knows if they do something to make this conference this season, for as much maligned as it's been, and with the media rights deal and everything, this season is going to be incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
We have probably the best lineup of quarterbacks in the country in terms of draft prospects, just kind of like the SEC had last year. It's loaded, ironically, with all of transfers from other schools.
Hey, Ryan, I know you know Nick Saban and the Alabama program. You do a lot of speaking in different colleges. I know you've gone down there. Right now, as we speak, I think he's in Senate trying to stop NIL. What are these old school coaches trying to do with NIL? Are they trying to put the genie back in the bottle, try and control it? And also, is Alabama going to take a step back to the pack because of all these changes, or is Alabama going to figure this all out?
Well, I think they still had the best recruiting class last year. So, he knows what he's doing. I just think they want some regulation, because the NCAA, they're just cowards. What they are is they're the biggest party planning company in the world. That's all they are. They plan a big party every March, and that's it. They don't do anything else. They don't really have any other power. That's why they'll be obsolete here soon. So they were trying to, squash NIL by going through the courts instead of putting something in place, because they tried. Rick George, athletic director of Colorado, was on the committee that was trying to find kind of some regulation around NIL. But once they lost in court, the head of the NCAA and everybody else who was pushing for this committee to make some regulatory things in the NIL aspect just squashed it and said, hey, they want the Wild Wild West. They get the Wild Wild West. It was a huge cop-out on their part, and that's what we've seen. And I think that's what coaches are trying to say. The intention is good. It's to compensate these athletes for their name, image, and likeness, because that's what should happen. But instead, it's become slush funds and pay for play. And that's not the intent. And no one has any control or regulatory rules over it. And I think that's what Nick Saban and like a lot of other people are talking about in terms of collectives out there, just putting aside all this money to get players to come there, when in reality, it's not for their name, image, and likeness. It's simply pay to play. And I think that's what probably Nick Saban's trying to eliminate, because, the University of Alabama, they have donors that will donate a bunch of money. So he's not, we're not talking about the poorest of the poor out there complaining here. He's still going to be near or at the top. But there are some collectives out there that are unreal in terms of the amount of money they have and what they can do with it. And I think, Texas A&M has been on the radar of a lot of people's because of it. Not anything by what Jimbo's done, but the people behind the scenes, that there's no regulation around. So I think that's what they're trying to change and what Nick Saban's trying to do.
Ryan Leaf, our guest, host of the Straight Line podcast on PointsBet USA. Ryan, you've been awesome. Thank you. Last question I have for you. You mentioned the Pac-12, the quarterbacks, and just how good they all are. Is anyone in that conference going to challenge Caleb Williams in terms of its dominance, supremacy, whatever you want to call it, from those QBs? If somebody has a chance to get in his class from the Pac-12, who do you think it is?
It's Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. They play each other this year. They didn't last year. He led the nation in passing. He was incredibly well protected in the pocket. He was hardly touched last year. And if they have any of the same type of protection, this team is going to be very difficult to beat. Now, it's so competitive. They beat up on each other. It wouldn't surprise me if the Pac-12 champion, again, had 2 losses or maybe even more. But if you're looking for somebody who could go out and throw for yards, touchdowns, he may not make as spectacular plays, because Caleb Williams sometimes, turns into Houdini for no apparent reason to go out the back and make some crazy plays. It's Michael Penix Jr. I do surely believe he came back to school because NIL existed. He's probably getting paid as much as he would have gotten as a 3rd or 4th round draft pick this year. And what he's doing is setting himself up for a chance at a Pac-12 championship, a chance at a run at the college football playoff. And I really do think he's the mainstay in terms of a guy that could challenge Caleb Williams for the Heisman Trophy. He just has to stay healthy. And that hasn't been a problem because they protected him. And they've got freaks running around the field at wide receiver. So that's the guy I would pick. That's hard for me to do. I absolutely hate Washington and the color purple. Don't get me wrong. But he's good. He's a good quarterback. And I think he'll be one of those guys to watch. But the whole conference, we talked about this. Bo Nix at Oregon, there's DJU at Oregon State, there's Cam Ward at Washington State. You go down the line to UCLA. They lost DTR, but brought in one of the biggest freshman recruits in the country, Caleb Williams.
Cam Rising
at Utah, yeah. Jalen DeLora at Arizona. They're loaded at quarterback in this conference. It's going to make for a fun season.
Shador Sanders. Yep.
Yeah, before we let you go, Ryan, I need you to settle a debate. I'm not going to lead you anyway and tell you which side I was on or which side Maggie was on. Best division in the AFC, go.
North.
Right?
By far.
Yeah, we were arguing. Maggie took the AFC East. I took the AFC North.
You just assume, Maggie, that the Jets are going to be the Jets. Aaron's great. There's no evidentiary proof that all of a sudden something shifts and changes. Like, you should expect the Jets to be mediocre down the line, middle, or at the back end. If they do something different, maybe we can come together. But I think that the Ravens are probably going to finish second in the North at 12-5 and be the 5 seed at 12-5, which, that's crazy. The NFL needs to change that by far. Like, it's the best record, period. Division winners get in, but best records in terms of seedings. But yeah, I mean, I love that you love your Jets. I love it.
No. I'm a Bills fan, Ryan. They're not my Jets.
I forgot. But in the city, you're you should like this though. Yeah, I think the Bills win the Super Bowl next year, by the way.
Oh, no, Ryan. I'm trying to have the Bills go under the radar here. They're going to clip that, and they're going to
Who's going to listen to me?
Everybody.
Come on.
Everybody. Ryan, thank you so much for the time. You always make time for us, and it's awesome. Thanks for the trip down memory lane, too, talking about your recruiting trips where you get to hang out with The Rock on South Beach. No big deal. Ryan Leaf, host of the Straight Line Podcast, PointsBet USA. Have a great weekend, Ryan.
Yeah, congrats again, bud.
Congrats.
Good to see you as always, and have a wonderful weekend.